For those with good taste.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those with Good Taste. I'm Matt. He's Lenny.
What's up, everybody?
And we're back to give you just about everything that you need when it comes to the world of combat sports and regular sports.
Maybe some wrestling.
No, definitely no wrestling.
We're not talking wrestling today?
No, we're not doing that, dude.
I promise I'll find a way.
You always do. I think it's apropos to start it off with what I think is the craziest shit that went down last week in sports.
We always find a way to start these episodes off with a little bit of chaos, a little bit off the beaten path. Although this was actually the biggest event of the weekend from like a pop culture perspective, honestly.
I mean, it has almost kind of taken the world by storm. And if you don't know, you're about to know. And we're talking about Christian Eriksen, captain of the Denmark national team, collapsing in the middle of a game during one of the biggest tournaments in the world.
I love that you let me do this whole other setup, and it wasn't for the same thing that I thought
Really?
it was. Yeah, no, I don't think the whole world's buzzing about soccer, but
Sorry,
a man, R.I.P. to that man. He passed away on the field this weekend.
died on the field and was brought back to life.
It was wild.
Shout out to his teammates for protecting him. Shout out to the doctors who brought him back.
Was he on like cocaine or something? Like, what's the deal?
No, dude, he legit just had a cardiac arrest.
Oh, you know what it was? Okay, I have a hot take.
Okay.
So, did you ever go to like GNC when you were like 18, 19 years old and they had the energy drinks that you had to show your ID for?
More times than I care to admit.
Yes, like the Red Line
that's
energy
what you,
drinks.
that's what you think?
I think he took too much pre-workout or something.
I don't know, man.
Another fun segue, dude. Did you know there's like there's a TikTok challenge? I should save this, but it plays more here.
Jesus.
There was a TikTok challenge that apparently it's like, I forget what they call it, but you're supposed to just eat pre-workout dry.
Oh, what? No. Yeah, that's not a thing.
Girl had a heart attack.
No. Well,
she was like 20 years old.
See,
had a fucking heart attack. She didn't know for a day.
This is the fucking problem, dude. We're doing challenges that are killing us at this point.
The Tide Pods.
And it's not like it's stopping anytime soon, but I certainly wouldn't put that in the same category as Christian Eriksen passing out on the field. The craziness and the reason why I said it was kind of nuts and it's taken the world by storm is, do you know what happened after he collapsed?
I saw a picture of the guy like pointing down.
So having nothing to do with that. So he points to them. They have to give him CPR on the field. They stopped the game, Len. Like, game's postponed. We're not going to play anymore. Saw that.
They probably did too.
We're not going to play. We're not playing the match anymore. And the game just comes to a screeching halt. UEFA, who is the head body of the Euro tournament, reaches out to Denmark and says, you have three choices. You can wait 30 minutes and then finish the game. You can wait until tonight and finish the game, or you can forfeit and lose by 3 goals, which is pretty much mean that you're out of the tournament. A man died on the field, Len.
Which one did they choose, though? Because that is an important question.
They replayed the game probably about an hour after.
Just an FYI, when Owen Hart fell from the rafters, they kept the event going.
Jesus Christ.
And I got wrestling in 5 minutes,
and that's the reason why I said Jesus Christ. I can't believe you've already pigeonholed us into this situation.
So the show must go on, dude, and UEFA knows just as well as WWE knows.
Well, at this point, man, it's the circus show must go on, Len. Yeah. And again, that wouldn't be more appropriate than when we're talking about the TikTok versus YouTube boxing event.
Yes.
What in the entire hell, Lenny?
It's so like I thought you were talking about initially at the start here. This has done like double the online traffic that the UFC 263 did this weekend.
Yeah, the same thing that you did with the WWE, I did that with the whole soccer story. So you're welcome. You can have your story now.
So the TikTokers fought the YouTubers, right?
It's almost like the Jets and the Sharks. West Side Story, baby.
To be completely honest, I only know who a couple of these people are, and I only know like barely. So you had Bryce Hall, who is supposedly like the TikTok bad boy.
Well, it's Addison Rae's ex-boo thing, dude.
Yeah, and he said he's been in 40 street fights.
And
he fought Austin McBroom, who I don't actually know.
But what did you know about the fight, Len?
That dude who said he's been in 40 street fights should have stayed in the streets because it didn't work out well for him in the ring.
Who was he fighting? Bunny rabbits? Because he got his ass kicked from what I heard.
Yeah. So the thing is, this kid Austin McBroom he fought is like a recruited D1 athlete.
Oh.
Like,
see, you're already lost.
And he was like 15, 20 pounds heavier, Matt.
Jesus. See, this is why these are circus shows. Like, there's no way a commission should be allowing this to happen.
So, but this is interesting from like a real perspective.
Yeah.
They were fighting with like 20-ounce gloves.
What?
So because they're all like TikTokers, and the commission that they fought under made them wear
the biggest gloves possible.
Pillows.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was not a lot of finishes. There was only one kid I think who got finished. Well, there was a TKO in this fight.
Yeah.
But think about it. If that was 12-ounce gloves or something.
No, you're probably getting knocked out.
Yeah, the way he was getting the shit. Because you didn't watch a lot of the fights.
No.
I've seen a couple. To be completely honest, I
read
watched,
the headline.
I watched a few highlights. I've seen the finish of this main event. Right.
Okay.
So I saw how hard that kid was getting hit.
Yeah.
And if that was with smaller gloves,
probably would have been done.
But like, dude, he got hit. He got clean rocked a few times, and he didn't even look out of it. And then it's like the 20-ounce gloves hitting you.
You're getting smacked
fights.
with pillows, dude.
Yeah.
It's no help for the game. The issue that I have is that this gets so much viewership, mainly because these guys are TikTokers and YouTubers, and they've already built their following, and it's kind of being thought of as what boxing is now. Right, it's like, oh, we've got these charity boxing events. These two people are going to put their dignity and their honor on the line. And that happened with freaking Lamar Odom and Aaron Carter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's get these two people who nobody really gives a shit about. No disrespect to any of them. But they're not in the limelight.
Although that is a lot different because, like, in terms of scale of money they can make and all of that, like, I think you were dead on at the beginning there where the thing that's going to be so successful for this TikTok, YouTube thing, and if you ever bring in like Twitch or any of these other major streaming platforms, right, is that you have people who have millions and millions of fans, and there is crossover between those fan groups, but at the same time, for what I know about the TikTok people, like me and you've been jokingly talking about it, I really know the names of like 4 or 5 of them to the point where like I could tell you kind of what they're known for, what they do. Yeah. And that's only because like Barstool has a podcast with one of the kids on there. So like that's really the only reason I'm kind of in it at all. But each one of these kids, like that Bryce Hall kid, he's going to make he was supposed to make $5 million for this fight.
Insane.
Right.
That's crazy.
That's more than Nate Diaz got paid.
Yep.
Right. But when you get down to it, this dude has 10 times the following. And he's able to promote that by himself while the person he's against has 5 million followers and they get to promote it for themselves. And then the kid underneath that has another 9 million. Like just each one of these kids is huge, huge influencers. And now you have 10 massive fan bases to promote your fight to. And that's why in a social media era, it's kind of genius. And they did double or triple the engagement online that UFC 263 did is just because the fan bases are massive.
Yeah, a lot of people are invested.
The Lamar and Aaron thing was different in the sense that I don't think anybody knew about that until after it happened.
No,
we
maybe it went both ways. Yeah,
like I'd heard it was happening, but I didn't know the date or anything. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I'm just seeing highlights of
kind of just snuck up on you
of Aaron just getting knocked around the ring in just comical fashion.
Yeah, some would say that we witnessed a murder.
Talk about a guy who I think that like nobody really felt bad about how he got his ass whooped. I mean, he signed up for it, but like,
and he got his licks in. You know, there was
that first 10 punches he let off, dude. Like he looked angry. What was he so mad about?
Dude, that was 20 years of being a child star just coming out. You're like, dude, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore.
Yeah, like this is what I have to do for drugs. Damn it!
But certainly don't fight a guy who's 10 inches taller than you.
Well, that's why it was like a freak show. And then speaking of Barstool, Portnoy said that they had originally, like, this fight had been pitched to them because Barstool does Rough and Rowdy.
Rough and Rowdy, yeah.
So it's a more of an amateur boxing, like, they put, like, just freak show fights on.
It's not supposed to be this big publicity stunt, but it ends up being that because of the people that go and do it.
Yeah, they've gotten some bigger stars to do it, but at the same time, they go to these, southern states and do it with just local talent, basically. Yeah. Low overhead and everything, but they had gotten pitched Lamar versus Aaron, and it's kind of like, why are these two going to fight each other, right? And I think that's where we kind of ended off here is like that fight happened, and
nobody has the following.
Chuck Liddell was in the middle of it.
You and I talked about it, man. It looked like a black eye all around.
He's going to fight Lamar Odom probably next, right?
Oh,
like
God,
Lamar
dude.
Odom's got to defend the strap.
What strap? You got a
no,
strap?
For a belt, I'm sure, dude.
Oh, dude, let's stop. Like this
Celebrity Boxing Championship, dude.
I mean, let's not say that celebrity boxing deserves to be called a champ. Anybody who's doing celebrity boxing doesn't deserve to be called a champion.
Honestly, it's insulting to celebrity boxing because you remember that shit when we were a kid, right?
Yeah,
on Fox,
and it like legitimately had
the Manute Bull versus the Fridge,
dude. Probably one of the most televised fights ever.
Yeah, like I those that was
That
actual.
was a legit fight.
And maybe I'm remembering it like you remember things fondly. You know, it could have been terrible, but
I don't know,
remember
man.
it being pretty fucking good.
We've watched that recently. I feel like we did.
Did we?
And this is probably like maybe 6 months ago. But yeah,
Okay.
we've definitely seen it. And it's like Manute Bol just throwing straight lefts and rights. And it's like, okay, this man maybe spent about 2 months in a gym. He knows what he's doing. But we'll move away from what I would consider the amateur BS.
Let's get on to real MMA.
Let's get to the real stuff. And somebody who made a well-anticipated debut, one of the greatest women boxers of all time. I'll just say greatest boxers of all time. Clarissa Shields made her MMA debut, Len.
Did you catch it?
I did.
Yes.
Not live. I caught it maybe a couple hours after it happened. But I'll tell you what, man. I was certainly nervous for her going into those first couple rounds.
I had forgotten initially that it was happening, and then all of a sudden, like that night, I caught like something promoting it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, I gotta get over and
watch
that. So I pulled up a stream, I found it, I watched it, and yeah. I thought it was an interesting test, even though they put her out there against a girl who was 3 and whatever, right? I don't have,
5.
dude. This is the thing, like that the UFC doesn't afford somebody like Chase Hooper the opportunity of, right? Is like this chick's a great specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Her hand speed is better than anybody in MMAs.
Yeah, by far,
right?
Bar none.
I'll not to get into too far into the fight itself yet, but like. She threw an overhand right, and I was like, "Oh, like that's like you learn that in an MMA gym.
Yeah,
like don't do that.
You would hope that
you don't have to do that.
She would stick to her own skills.
Yeah, you don't have to throw that kind of right hand just because you're wearing gloves. These like the MMA gloves. You know? But yeah, I thought it was interesting to put her out there against a grappler, against a jiu-jitsu player.
Yep.
Because it could do one of two things. It was either going to make her look amazing because she'd come out there and just blow the doors off this girl with some stand-up, which wouldn't have answered any real questions, but would have lifted some buzz, some notoriety, given a good viral clip.
Sure.
Instead, what we got was kind of the perfect thing for her growth, I think.
If you can showcase that you can deal with adversity on the biggest stage, at least for her at this point, it does wonders for what you're going to be able to do to set up your next fight.
Yeah, so to get into the fight, it's like, so the first 2 rounds essentially are spent with her getting taken down.
Yep.
Showing some flashes of nice striking, obviously, but like, yeah,
you expected that.
Getting taken down inevitably and gets mounted, is put in some bad spots.
Looks dangerous, man.
Yeah, and she's able to maintain her, her calmness. Yeah. She's been in a lot of battles in her life, but I could see it going completely different where it's like you could be in a million boxing matches, but you're not on your back with somebody throwing punches at you from above you. And she didn't panic at all. She stayed in there.
Level of composure was up there.
Yeah, she stayed in there and she hung in there. And it was I think going into the 3rd round, it was like, okay, if this goes the same way, it's not going to go the way you want it to, but it's not the be all end all. It's going to kill any hype that she has. Yep. But I think what ends up happening is honestly the best outcome that she could have. Now you're going
to have women lining up to fight her, right? Because they're going to think that they can do it for 3 rounds. Where her name's escaping me now, but the woman that she fought wasn't really going to be able to do anything outside of what she was doing.
So you're right. People are going to take that as a hole in her game that they can exploit, anybody who's more experienced, and that's fair. That's always going to be the thing they were going to exploit if you're going to do it at all.
Let them do that, though.
But I think what it did was it answered a lot of questions because showing poise down there at least lets you know that she's going to keep getting better.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of people are concerned about a boxer coming over to MMA, right? Because your skills, you can be one of the best boxers in the world. What's going to happen when your combinations, your jabs and everything else are completely neutralized with a grappling game? It's
also, they talk about, and there's probably a million examples, but this is what comes to my head instantly, is like Justin Gaethje. They talk about how he really doesn't train jiu-jitsu at all.
Yeah.
Right? He just relies on defensive wrestling and that. And I think that's fine, and that's going to get you to a certain point. But look what happened to him when Khabib got on top of him. He sliced through him.
There's
like
levels
nothing,
to this
right?
game. Yeah.
I think what it shows with Clarissa is, at least in the early stages of this, she's somebody who's embracing all aspects of the sport and is willing to humble herself, because I think that's what a lot of that comes down to. And it's not to say, like, again, Justin Gaethje might not be the best example. It's just what came to my head.
But no, you're talking about someone who he's stuck in his game plan, and we've seen signs of where that doesn't always pay off, right? Being able to openly take on any aspect of the game, but for Clarissa being a world champion and having to be grinded out on the ground. Like, when you talk about humbling yourself, that's really what it comes down to. You have to be able to put yourself in terrible positions and be able to get out of them.
For sure. So yeah, it was great to see. She ends up getting the TKO on the ground in the 3rd round. Her ground and pound was hard. It also did look a little like the girl was at the point where she was getting out of there. And I think you're going to get that at that level of MMA. But again, I think that it's a perfectly acceptable starting point for a person who doesn't have any amateur fights, right? And she's just jumping right in the fire.
Yeah, I mean, she's, again, jumping into the limelight, and there's a lot of expectations for her because although she's fighting in PFL, you're only a stone's throw away from a few good performances and possibly getting called up to the UFC, right?
There's that. She's only, I mean, that's got to be the end destination here. It's also like, for the moment, Kayla Harris is there, and they're not going to book them anytime soon because Kayla Harris, from the grappling perspective, is going to maul this girl, right?
Yeah, it would be dirty.
It would be over so quickly. But I think from a perspective of like name value, if you can get a Clarissa Shields out here for 3 years and winning and maybe taking a couple losses, but doing her thing and getting better, it's gonna get set up at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we saw their roster. Their roster is kind of filled with older UFC names, right? Like
from
people
a male
that we
perspective.
know. From a male perspective.
Female, it's a little more diverse, I
Well,
suppose.
what I was going to say is it gives you an opportunity to kind of thrust the women's division in that organization to the forefront.
Yeah.
Because you do have two people who do have the potential to be a star, and you can kind of tell a story, which I think is something that the UFC could maybe work on a little bit, is building up some of the stories. I mean, let's jump into UFC 263.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start off with Damien Maia versus Belal Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
We even mentioned it. We were like, is this going to be his last fight? Do we even know if this is going to be Damien Maia's last fight? A story that wasn't really told going into it.
No, Dana definitely addressed it after the fact.
Yeah.
And it's actually... So Damien Maia ends up taking a loss here pretty convincingly.
Yep.
Not anything devastating from Belal, but a smart fight from him.
Yep.
Kept out of the grappling exchanges and won on the feet. Maia just didn't have he's never had a hugely diverse game, but he's always had a way to get to the ground.
Yep.
This fight, and they talked about it a lot on commentary, he was very stuck in going for one kind of way to get it there, and he just couldn't do it.
Yeah, he was really stuck on the single leg.
Yeah.
Like every single time, and there was no
Belal
audible call.
is super impressive.
Yes,
absolutely. On his takedown defense. But to your point, after the fight, we get Dana White kind of just saying like, yeah, it's probably he's probably time for him to hang it up.
Yeah.
That could be his last one with us. Flip side is Damien Maia's like, I have one fight left on my contract. He named a name.
He did name a name. He swung for the fences.
And I don't blame him. Like, I don't hate the fight, honestly, from a Nate perspective.
No, you kind of like it because if it gets down to the ground, it could actually get really interesting.
He did it respectfully, but he was like, Nate, I saw the nice words you had to say for me at the press conference. I feel the same way about you.
Yeah.
I'm a person who's always prided myself on taking growing jiu-jitsu and like being a true martial artist. You're the same. I'd love to, and I'd be honored to have my last fight against you. I love that because I think on the ground, it's obviously something to get us all excited, but on the feet, like Nate's going to.
Oh, come on, man. Like it's not even close. And they made some mention of it on the commentary in this fight where like Damien's striking game has never been elite, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's always been something where he can hold his own, but it's always a means to get to the ground or to get into the grappling exchanges. This was a huge wake-up call that there's always going to be levels to this game. Belal Muhammad is nowhere near a top-tier striker, and he was able to really just neutralize Damien on the feet.
He probably would have something different to say. I mean, so I guess it's what you mean. Like, he's a top 15 striker. I would say. Like,
at welterweight, sure.
Yeah, like I mean, I can only rank him against his peers, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best in the UFC, but he's definitely a talented striker. I mean, that's his best aspect of his game,
sure.
And he is a top 10 at this point fighter after coming off of this fight. And not for nothing, like the performance against Leon wasn't great, but
there was still a lot of things left to. There was more left to be had in that fight, I think.
Yeah. So I just think overall good performance for Belal. Got him right on the right track. Cracks him into the top 10. Let's see him get matched up with somebody good. I don't know who's really in front of him or right around him that I'd love to see him go against. Damien Maia. I think you give him one more in the UFC out of respect. I mean, the guy's given a lot of great years.
He's got one fight on his contract. What's the hurt?
He's in his mid-40s and still fighting top 10 athletes. I think that's a reason enough to give him a shot, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I knowing what we know now and Nate coming off of that loss, which we're about to get into now, that wouldn't be a bad idea for them.
If Nate wants to stay at 170, and get a fight in relatively soon.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, if you were to look back, you've really got no names behind him in the rankings at welterweight.
The issue for him is like Magny and Neal are both coming off. Neal
Neal
beat Magny. So there's the option, right?
Yeah, you can do, but they've done Neil Magny versus Damien Maia, and I feel
No, I'm saying Neil Magny versus Belal Muhammad.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're definitely right there. Okay.
Do Magny? You can either do Belal versus Chiesa or Belal versus Magny. I think.
I mean, he's certainly.
Vince, I forget Luque's that high up ranked. That's kind of crazy.
They have him. Yeah, he smacked a couple.
5?
People.
Fuck, dude, that
might be a little bit much.
You know, here's the crazy thing. If I'm looking at the people that Nate Diaz could have picked to come out here and fight, why wouldn't you just pick Vicente Luque out of instead of Leon? I get
you wonder if they even offered it to him.
Well, he doesn't. Nate Diaz doesn't get offered.
Really?
Nate Diaz tells them
who he's gonna fight. All right, my bad, dude. You took serious offense to that.
Just look at the response to who was the star on that night.
No, I get that,
2
man.
nights ago,
And we can only hope that let's jump right into it, dude. We keep knocking on the door. Let's open it up, knock that bitch down. Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. To sum it up, they gave Nate Diaz 5 rounds to get it done. And Dana White made the joke that the Diaz brothers are going to ask for 10-round fights next.
Yeah, well, the other meme that's going around is the Diaz brothers don't lose fights; they just run. Out
They run out of time.
They just run out of rounds. Yeah,
you kind of felt that way, right? Like Nate has this 65-second time period where you're like, holy shit, this is over. Mm-hmm. And luckily enough, Leon is able to withstand it, but for the majority of this fight, it looked like Leon had it in the bag.
Well, I think it went the way odds makers predicted. Yeah. I think we mostly felt this way last week. To my pick of a finish, to me, is still a very realistic pick watching that fight, and that's why I texted you that night. The issue is from a Leon perspective, because first of all, good performance by him, dominant performance by him, last minute withstanding, but the issue I come away with it is, first and foremost, did you feel like that did anything to give you optimism of him versus Kamaru?
No, it made me really wonder if he would be able to keep that being a 5-round fight, it looked like his gas tank was done before the championship rounds.
Yeah, and so, I don't know. I didn't, the gas tank thing didn't really show. I might have to watch it again because it didn't show as much of an issue to me.
Here's my thing is, once Nate started putting a lot of pressure on him, he was wilting.
He was letting it get to him a little bit more.
Yeah, and you could see that once he was taking a lot of shots, if there was a game plan that he was sticking to, he was finding it very difficult to employ it, right? So I would say if you put Leon Edwards up against Colby Covington, he's going to have a hard time.
And that's where the issue I had with it was that I felt like if he really wanted to, he could have gotten Nate out of there in the first 2. And that's where I think, to your point with the gas tank, it must have been, if I don't get this guy out in the first 2, I'm fucked for the last 3.
Yeah.
And I'd rather fight a strategy that got me through 4.5 rounds of this fight without largely running into any true issues. I liked the energy he had. Yeah. I liked when he went to give Nate the fist and Nate slapped it away and gave him the double birds.
Yeah.
I liked his response there. I liked some of his energy he was giving off. I think we also got at the end of the fight, Nate clearly likes the energy the guy has too. He picked him for a reason. Like I said, he picks who he fights, so he chose him for a reason. And the little at the end, Nate didn't look upset. Nate didn't look. He clearly had energy left.
Nate looked like he took it for what it was.
Yeah, he kind of rubbed him on the head that was fucking dope. We went at it. You really gave me a tough fight, but he still walked away feeling like he had done enough to be proud of it. But I kind of believe, and I don't know where you felt about his post fight, how he talked about getting cut, and he just seemed like he didn't have it up for the week, the whole week leading up to the fight. And I could see it looking back on the stuff. And furthermore, just in his performance, I go back and look at the Michael Johnson performances when he has a little bit more of a chip on his shoulders.
And he comes
and
out
is a little
blazing,
bit more
dude.
inspired. Yeah. Well, he has bad early rounds, but he
no,
never
no,
really.
What I mean comes out blazing is when he's on, he puts in performances.
The leg kicks in the early stages probably did a lot for this, because I was just thinking about his jab wasn't pumping as much as it would when his performances are really good, those hands start going and he starts throwing a lot of combinations. He couldn't get combinations.
For me, it's in his 1-2s. You see him throw 1-2s like he's giving out candy, right? You'll see him constantly putting the pressure on, and it just didn't really seem like it was there.
But that punch he rocks him with at the end is the most prototypical Nate Diaz punch. It's the combination he hits on everyone, and it's just he changes up the timing a little bit on the way he's been throwing. So rather than throwing on beat, like he's been throwing on beat every other time, he splits the timing. It seems like on that second punch and gets it through, and puts the dude on skates. Like realistically, like okay? So one of the big narratives that have coming out of this is like people think Nate could have gotten the finish if he didn't stop and point at him. Where do you stand on that?
We'll never know.
So that's
like
it's all.
But my take is Nate's always been in that position. Like
that's where I don't necessarily agree, because I just don't know how much extra time he wasted. By doing that.
To me, if anything, that's Nate letting him know, like, I know what you're like. You're in my zone. You're in my time, my space now.
I don't think he expected him to stumble, like, because he points and then he does that extra stumble.
He dances.
It's not like I think Nate thought he hit him clean.
I told you about the photo.
Yeah.
The photo that's out there, you can see it very clearly. When he's pointing at him, his head is like sideways and Leon's eyes are crossed. Mm-hmm. So it's at that moment where, again, you're talking a split second where he pauses and points. Are you expecting him to run up and then maybe get him to the cage?
The second he realizes the stumble, he's on
him. Yeah, like there's not really much else that he can do, and there's nothing in that fight that shows me that it would have went down any differently.
I do think that if there was an extra 30 seconds to 1 minute in that fight...
I fucking feel like you say that for Nate Diaz all the time.
But, dude, okay.
It's true.
But every fight he's finished. Go look at Gray Maynard. Yeah. Go look at the knockout of Gray Maynard.
It's an onslaught
and look at the way the end, or like the third round of the second Conor fight, I think is like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just for a minute and a half, the dude just unloads everything he can, and he's not tired during it. And I just, that's where it was looking. He was throwing haymakers at the end too.
Yeah, we're always going to land on the side that if he had more time, Leon would have been done. Yeah. Right? I think we can both agree to that. But the point is, it's a 5-round fight. Mm-hmm. And in those first 2 rounds, Leon could do no wrong. I think he was doing really well. Yeah. He was doing a good job of putting pressure on Nate. And
through almost all of the first 4 rounds, I don't think you can really critique very much of his performance.
Well, I say those first 2 rounds because in the third round, you can definitely see a gear switch almost for Nate. You could see him start getting into somewhat of a rhythm where he's starting to pick up.
Mm-hmm. He starts pushing forward more than like where his way of dealing with pressure is just so funny. Because he doesn't have footwork. Like
he just looks bothered.
Yeah, he doesn't. Well, he just doesn't have a. He's not an agile dude.
No,
he's kind of goofy and awkward. So he does that like back and forth pace that just makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because they're like, why are you just staring at me like
dude,
that?
Why aren't you rounding the cage? Why are you just staying right in front of me like that?
Or like his other way was like, oh, you're gonna corner me? I'll put my hands on my hips or like down on my knees and bend over and show you my ass, and then pop off a 1-2 to get you away from me.
It's very unique to the Diaz style, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll leave this with just saying that the fight was what I think we wanted it to be, right? Like I don't.
It hit everything that you could really need it to. And if you were the UFC and had to draw out an outcome, you're like, okay, we maintain one of our top welterweight contenders, somebody to back up if Kobe gets hurt, but we also leave with Nate Diaz still being the biggest star, coming away looking like a fucking winner,
and people still wanting to watch.
Oh,
right? Like it's no.
He's going to be a 500 fighter, and people are still going to show.
Oh yeah, it's different in the sense that like a cowboy, right? Because every performance that Nate Diaz puts in, even if he's losing, he's always showing showing that he can be very threatening. Man, I'll just say that the UFC got what they bargained for, and I think for anybody to say that the fight changes by mocking an opponent, just watch every other Nate Diaz fight.
Yeah,
know your place.
All right, so next up we had our co-main event
of the evening
of our co-main event, but this is the co-main. Probably the most heartwarming part of the night. Probably the biggest star-making performance. Nate Diaz already came in a superstar, but I think there was one guy who came out of this night with far bigger buzz than what he came in. And I had picked against him last week, Matt, and we talked about this on our other episode that's going to come out this week for our weekly pod. Check that out. But like the way we record sometimes is tough because we're recording on a Tuesday and we haven't even seen any of the fight week stuff. Like I haven't seen an embedded. Nope. I haven't seen a press conference. I haven't seen a weigh-in, and we're kind of just making picks. And I think the one thing I did not know going into this fight is that Brandon Moreno is a commentator for UFC Spanish broadcast.
I had no fucking idea.
Yes. So he's been doing during the pandemic, he's been doing the UFC Spanish broadcast. And I say that because I think I would have changed my pick on the mere fact that when you see that many fights and you're taking in that much stuff.
You see my face right now, dude?
Like,
that's a game changer.
Like I think you level up your game just by seeing that much stuff close up. And
Paul Felder.
Learning, like Felder, I mean, obviously Cruz has always been a really like a
cerebral
brain like that.
fighter.
But when you learn that people's brains work like that because they had to do commentary, that immediately I saw that in the trailer build up to the fight, and I was like, fuck. Like, because he already had the game plan in the first fight. I just thought the physical intangibles of Figurido were going to be enough to overwhelm him.
Well, we talked about the skill set. Like we talked about, it was not to say that he didn't have the know-how to beat Figurido. He showed that he had the heart, but we were just wondering if Figueiredo's levels, like the championship caliber that he showed, was going to be able to kind of outlast Brandon Moreno.
When you're coming off of he was one of the guys who looked like a world beater last year.
Yeah.
Versus this year, and it's like I think the weight cut's really what's hurting him.
Yeah, he's huge, man. Like it's crazy.
The fight itself, Figueiredo still looked good. His timing on the feet wasn't there, but I was really impressed with when they got to the ground. His ability to just manipulate with his brute force from the bottom.
Like you talk about having a lot of dexterity. Like my goodness, dude, when he was explosive.
Yeah,
like
when he went like butterfly guard, lifts this dude up,
like
I'm out,
dude. Yeah. Like how, right? But there was something to be said, man. Brandon Moreno's confidence on the feet. He was confident in that first fight. He knew something that we didn't know in the second fight, right? Did it almost feel like he was sitting on something?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like he knew from the first fight. He saw the game plan. I need to put it on this dude, but I think he bulked up a little bit for this fight, so he was able to hit harder.
Yep.
But he knew I just need to keep volume. I don't need to hit he throws more like a Diaz brother, I think, in terms of the
I don't
way
need to knock him out with one shot. I need to put the pressure, create an onslaught, and
use
wear
my
him
timing
down.
And just hit him, go wherever the fight needs to go, and just make him work for 25 minutes, and I can break this guy, right? So we get that. And another common theme that we're seeing, and we've talked about over the past few weeks, dating back to maybe Usman, is these great champions that we're establishing right now, going back to Max Holloway as well as Dustin Poirier, these guys with these educated jabs, these MMA fighters that are finally investing time into developing that punch. And Moreno is another guy who is now doing that. I mean, his jab in this fight,
crispy, man.
It dictated everything that happened on the feet because it dictated the timing that
you mentioned. Deiveson's timing.
Yeah,
right,
he
you were
was
talking
lunging.
about how it was off, and I think it's 100% attributed to Brandon Moreno being able to dictate the space.
Well, so when you have to, we were talking about this with, I forget what fight it was, but we were talking about, it might have been like the Logan Paul thing or something, but like when you're throwing from the wide out the entire time, like kind of the way that Deiveson was doing, he's throwing lunging hooks and like these
you could
wild
see he was trying to hurt him,
and all he's doing is just popping the jab, and then when he rocks him in the first round, it's just it's a clean fucking jab and spins the dude's head around.
Like when you see it in real time, you're like, how did he drop him? Like what happened? And then you see it in slow motion. It's that one split second where you throw him off completely. His body's in a
he doesn't anticipate it.
It's in a different space
for it. Yeah,
right?
It's wild.
It was really just incredible to see how he evolved from that first fight. And when you talk about him bulking up, they did mention that in the commentary. They're like he made sure that he spent a lot of time in the weight room because you could kind of tell that his punches weren't landing as hard as Deiveson was in the first fight. Completely changed it around in this one where he had the snap on those punches. And just I don't know what you want to call it, the fluidity of everything, it made his punches have way more power on them.
So, would the fight go 3 rounds or is it 2 rounds?
I think it's 3, and I'm going to hate myself. I want to say it was 3.
So, with that finish, the moments of the finish, dude, like the choke itself was beautiful.
Oh, man.
It was beautiful. Great work. But post-fight, dude, like, I hate that they just don't make it easy, dude.
No, they don't. And I'm not helping either, so.
Well, you are the worst internet user I've ever met. So, I think you just looked up Brandon Moreno and it would have just been under his...
Shut up. Just keep on going and saying what you were saying, dude.
You did this in the fucking...
Shut up. Third round. I was right. Okay.
So, that moment after he gets the choke, though, and he just kind of gets up. And
that was my favorite. Dude, I almost cried. No bullshit.
Yeah, he's looking around, and it's almost like is this happening? Like, is
Yeah.
this real? Like,
Yeah.
did I just do that?
It's really incredible, man.
It like sinks in almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then props, and I know I've seen it all over the place, but props to Figurido because
Very classy.
the way he handled that post fight was you don't see a lot of guys that are just going to be so giving in that moment that he was.
I just think that those two have a level of respect for each other, right? And I think any fight where you genuinely go to war with someone and you have unfinished business, he knew that Moreno had put in the work, right? Like he must have felt it and knew, like, hey, this is this kid's moment.
This wasn't my night, and that kid beat me fair.
This wasn't my night, and he proved it in this fight that he had what it take to beat me, and he was more than happy to let him have that limelight.
You know, and Moreno actually mentioned, like, and this goes back to what we said earlier about making our picks so early in the week, is Moreno mentions when he pushes him at the weigh-in, he was just kind of like, I got this guy.
Yep.
And I take that always when certain guys just, that's part of their personality, but somebody like Moreno, with like Figurido and the way he seemed to have been handling it, he's usually been a cool dude. Like when he,
and you're showing a completely different character,
and it's almost like he's trying to convince himself.
Yeah,
you know, like it's probably
Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Rose Namajunas, the first one.
Yeah,
where she was just being really mean.
Exactly.
Right, and you're like, this isn't you.
Yeah,
like this.
Well, she is kind of like that.
You're the boogie woman, right? But there was times in weigh-ins where she's like, I'm going to end you.
She definitely had bought her own hype more than this. Just seemed like a guy who needed a confidence boost. And between a bad weight cut, so he's probably irritable. And then it seemed like he probably just didn't feel like he had it. You know?
But let's not take anything away, right? Like Brandon Moreno, a huge moment for him.
I think he gained 115,000 followers on Instagram in that one day.
I heard this and I was like, wait a minute, this can't be true. UFC's first Mexican-born champion.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's incredible.
Because Cain Velasquez is American-born.
Yeah, American-born. He always kind of wore the flag as like, hey, I'm representing the Mexican people.
But he doesn't. They used to make fun of him because they said he didn't speak.
Yeah, he didn't speak any Spanish.
Yeah.
Hey, man, if you're gonna put people on your shoulders, I don't think anybody should break you down for it. But you know, I love hearing the John Anik bites. And John Anik saying, Mexico, you've got one of your own. You're like, oh, man, like it just adds to that moment.
There is something about being a great commentator. How'd you feel with the team this weekend? Because normally pay-per-views these days, we're getting DC and
did you hear why DC wasn't?
He was doing something for his wrestling team,
the team that he coaches. Yeah, he like just volunteers and basically took them to an event and all that stuff. Really cool. But I love the team. Honestly, I actually enjoyed it. I felt like it was a little bit less focused on Rogan, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like I feel like we were getting a lot more from it was Felder, right? Yeah, from Felder and from John Anik. And John Anik, to me, right now, I think we mentioned it last week. He is in a position where he just cannot do any wrong.
He's the best. He's Goldie created the role. I guess was like kind of the patriarch of the role, but like John Anik's the best at the role.
Yeah, like he's
Mauro Ranallo and like John Anik are the guys, right?
And you love to see it on that type of event where there were a lot of things to kind of play up and kind of focus on, and John Anik doesn't miss a beat. Yeah. But Paul Felder, man, when you talk about somebody being a student of the game and really benefiting from being able to take in that many fights as a commentator, he's coming to his own as a commentator. We've always said that he was very good. But I think with this team, I think he really stood out.
The smartest change, 7 or 8 years ago, the UFC made to that broadcasting team is acknowledging that like we should have a guy who's actually been in it on there at all times. So it's like, yeah, Rogan's personality is great, and he knows grappling as well as any pro pretty much would, right?
But it's more entertainment.
Goldberg was just a voice, right? So now
virtually
you have a guy like Anik who's extremely intelligent, well-spoken, the whole nine. You have the litany of fighters that they have to go through.
Yeah.
That all have unique experiences. Because like Bisping's out there as one of their commentators. Dan Hardy was great. Unfortunately not there anymore.
Not part of the team anymore. Yeah.
But he was great. So they've just done a good job with the people they've picked. Dominic Cruz, we said earlier.
Yeah.
Do you think that Figueiredo wants that instant rematch for third? I think after a finish like that you probably need, if you're going to make Wei Lee go do it again, get a win.
For me, it's kind of decisive. Like you drew in the first match, and he came away decisively in the second. Mm-hmm. I don't need to see a third right away.
But well, the argument would be that the first one is not. It was pretty clearly Figueiredo won. He lost a point.
Okay,
but it was it was kind of a controversial point. So I'm just saying that fight wise, just look. His argument is like I lost. I tied this guy on a foul, but I really won the fight. So we're essentially 1-1 right now.
We could say that, right? you and I always go back to what's on the cards, right?
I mean, there's not a lot big name behind it. I think that's the biggest fight you can make at flyweight, unless Cody Garbrandt wants to try and drop down again.
Maia, and I don't even care about Cody getting a title shot at this point. He can fuck off and on. For me, it comes down to, as long as nobody has to wait, if there's nobody out there that deserves the title shot right now, which nobody's really coming to mind, right?
There's Asmov versus Perez. They just booked.
And Alex Perez has already lost to Deiveson Figurido. So
that's why it's weird that they put him in a number one contenders fight.
To me, it maybe almost sounds like you'd have to do a rematch. But if there's another contender out there, I don't think it's an immediate rematch. But this kind of seems like it's going to be set up to be a trilogy fight, which it's going to be a lot of pressure on Figueiredo to come back and
get that weight cut right. You gotta pay somebody to help you with that, man.
Call Doce, man. Figure it out. He's looking strapped. But let's move on to the main event, Lenny. One that we've been waiting for, because you and I are definitely on the style bender train. We were hoping that this would be a performance that gets him back on the right path. How did you feel coming out of this 5-round affair?
Definitely a performance that gets him on the right track, but not the most impressive performance I've seen of his.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I would agree, and it almost felt like something was left on the table. And I say this as a casual, right? Anybody who knows me says that. We get that term thrown around a lot. I'm not a fighter, so I can't say whether or not things are left out there. Stylebender looked very Anderson Silva-esque in the sense that I was waiting for so many times where it felt like he had an opening, and he just wasn't throwing punches. He wasn't throwing strikes. And I don't know if it's the aura of Stylebender where he feels like he needs to make all this movement to gauge where his opponent is, but it almost felt like there were instances where he could have finished this fight, and he just didn't.
I think there was more of an attempt on his end to finish it than, say, like Leon did earlier in the night. I think you're mostly right in the sense that he does all that feinting and setting up, but he knows he so confidently has somebody edged out from a talent standpoint that if he doesn't see the perfect moment, I don't think he'll always throw.
Okay.
But those head kicks, he was looking for it with the head kicks.
I know. And he was setting it up beautifully.
That's where, like, Vettori's probably not getting enough credit. Like, his defense was really, really good, I thought, for most of that fight. The difference with the Anderson comparison is very natural to make. I think Izzy's better from the legs down, like from the waist down. His feet, like Anderson obviously made a career on kicking people too, but like
it's more Muay Thai where Israel's more kickboxing.
Izzy can do like a little bit of everything. Yeah. I think just a little bit better there, but Anderson's hands were far better, and I think that was the issue here is that Stylebender couldn't really get it done with his hands. Yeah. And even looking at I've looked at the Whitaker fight and the Gastelum fight, and I've never loved the way Izzy throws like his hooks and stuff.
Well, I mean, his chin is wide open when he does it. He throws
from like down here a lot. He wings them, and
they're not really set up.
And I always thought that was weird, just because like you're coming from a kickboxing background, but I wonder if that's the gloves that you have to be able to go around.
You also got to remember having your hands down in a kickboxing fight makes it a little bit easier to parry, and he's a very like lean back heavy guy where he's avoiding those strikes.
So his hands are already there.
It makes a little bit more sense for his hands to be there, but the two things that I took away and I wanted to get your take on was from a wrestling defense perspective, he looked like he's really come a long way. And it's tough to kind of gauge it because Jan's a much bigger guy. But were you surprised that he was able to hold off Marvin the way that he was?
So I'll credit Luke Thomas on this guy. You know, I don't want to put this out really as my own thoughts, but I think it's the best take on it. Where on the fence, you're not going to really get Izzy down. Like Jan can kind of do it because he's got a much bigger frame than even Marvin Vettori does. But the style of chase, like people think that chasing Izzy down and pushing him into the cage is the way you're going to beat him.
You got to get him in the middle.
Realistically, giving him that extra bit of leverage and his ability to his head movement is in the fight. One of the brightest spots in this fight for him, I thought, was his head movement on the cage. Yeah. His bobbing and weaving was fantastic.
He was almost drawing him in.
Yeah, his awareness of it, because he knew that like this guy's just going to keep crashing into me too. Yeah. But like from there, his defense on the cage was great. He did really well on the ground. And showed, growth in that area. I think you're 100% right. But so what Luke kind of said was, I think what you really need to see more of at this point is somebody who's going to be willing to try and get him to come after them a little bit.
And shoot for the takedown, maybe in the center of the octagon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To draw him into the middle of the octagon. And you need somebody who's talented enough to take him down without the cage there. And that easier said than done, and especially with the way he fights, with the teeps, the knees,
Well,
the leg kicks.
The second thing I wanted to bring up was those leg kicks, man, because the leg kicks, it seemed like
that's how he wins fights, man.
He wasn't gonna miss.
That's how he won the Yoel fight, right? And that's how he wins close fights. Is he's so talented, and that's such a safe strike for him that, like, what was it really? He got taken down once off of it.
Well, that's why, in the second point that I wanted to make is those leg kicks. It seemed like he couldn't miss with them. But there was almost a level of Izzy just knows or feels like he can't be knocked out, right? And that confidence is almost leaked into his takedown defense, where he knows he can be taken down, but at this point he probably feels like no one at 185 is going to be able to keep him down.
Yeah.
So there's a level
Which is crazy because he's still coming in light. He came in at 183 and a half.
Yeah, it's
I think the weights on fight night was it was like 196 or 197 for Izzy, and Marvin was at 211.
Yeah, so you're talking about he just drank a bunch of water at that point just to get hydrated for the fight. Man, to me it really comes down to you're going to have to find someone who's going to be able to pressure Izzy and gain his respect from a striking point of view, because even when Izzy goes to war like he's done with Calvin Gastelum, even if he respects your punches, he's not going to curl up, right? No. He's still going to go out there with his chin up, and he oozes that confidence that he feels like he can take your punch, but you can't take his. And I thought that was something big where Marvin just wasn't able to overcome that and the leg kicks.
Yeah, there's a clear talent disparity there. And it's not to say Marvin can't get better. The dude's only like 25 or 26 years old.
No,
he's really young.
Wouldn't be surprised if it's, only the second time they see each other, right?
Yeah. It could be tough to book it again. He's got to hope that maybe Izzy does go up permanently at some point, unless he really rattles off some dominant victories.
Yeah.
He's got to go out there and get finishes, and his style isn't necessarily a finisher. It's kind of a grinder, right?
Did you see how they promoted him, though? Throughout the entire buildup of the fight?
The crazy fucking Italian guy yelling all the time?
No, so they were promoting it as he's the most dominant grappler, but in his last 3 fights, they were talking about how the grappling has led to TKOs and submissions. Like, they were trying to build it up like he was this finisher.
But he didn't finish Kevin Holland, no?
No, he didn't. Yeah. But that was the only one that they brought up. So the target was he had the most takedowns in middleweight history on Kevin Holland. And it was like, all right, man, you're building him up as he's going to be this wrecking ball going up against Izzy.
He's not necessarily that guy.
And he's not. He's really not. So I thought it was really weird that they kind of built him that way.
So we got the style bender. One of the best qualities that he has, kind of Chael Sonnen-esque, is always having his next opponent picked out and kind of dictating his own path.
Yep.
And he did that again here. He wants the long-awaited rematch that I think we all think is the most competitive fight for him right now. I loved the speech.
He's got a knack for it.
Who's that other cunt? Bobby Knuckles. Let's do it again.
You almost hate it because he says motherfucker a couple times, and you're like, oh, don't do that, man. I want to use that bit. Let that hit the radios. Let that hit TV.
But then the end, I'm the king, bitch.
He knows how to play to the bad guy role, but to play to a younger audience, right? Like, he knows how to tell the people or say what the people want to hear. And that's definitely the fight that we got to get.
The only thing stopping him from that Conor level, because the speeches and the aura is there. It's just he's got to get Conor got to where he was getting finishes,
big finishes.
And it's not again. I don't mean Izzy's going for it.
No, I know,
I
know.
He's just got to get a couple more of those highlights in him again here. But nonetheless,
because even the build up to it, a lot of the highlights were older fights.
Yeah,
right. Like him getting knockouts, him head kicking people. We know he's capable of it. It's just in order to take him to that next level of superstardom, we need something big.
I'm really excited for the Bobby Knuckles fight, though. That's my guy. I picked him to beat Stylebender last time. Who knows where I'll be on this one? I don't want to give it a pick yet.
Yeah. Let's wait until that fight gets a little bit closer. But we wrap up UFC 263. We were both pretty happy with the results. Exciting card all around. Yeah. Fun night. We've got something coming up this weekend, Len.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a return of the Korean Zombie.
My guy.
And he is fighting, do they call him the Kiwis? Dan Ige.
They call him the
Kiwis, yeah. If you're from New Zealand, they call you a Kiwi.
Daniel Ige.
So Dan Ige versus the Korean Zombie is headlining UFC on ESPN. Not a ton of names on this card. We got Marlon Chito Vera making an appearance. Matt Brown is also fighting Diego Lima. The immortal Matt Brown's still doing the damn thing.
Didn't know Diego Lima was still in the UFC, honestly. I thought he had washed out at this point.
Nope.
hopefully Matt Brown can get a win, and I feel like he's on his way out here. But he hasn't looked great the last couple times he's fought. Chito Vera, like always excited to see where he's going to go here. I don't know who he's fighting, but
not a big name.
No, maybe we'll get a kind of a showcase for him. But
yeah, you're hoping that this is an opportunity for him to show off his skills and see what he's got in the tank.
As far as the main event, I'm gonna ride with TKZ here. He has been one of my favorite fighters. I hated the couple years he had to take off there. Even the fights he's lost recently, the Ortega one was tough.
Yeah.
But the fight previous, the Yair fight,
yep.
right? Like he was fighting really well in the Yair fight.
I mean, you're talking freak knockout.
Yeah.
Like one for the ages.
Mm-hmm. So, and Dan Ige has been a guy on the come up. He's looked really, really good. Didn't he lose his last time out though, right?
Dan Ige, hold on. I had it pulled up and I freaking lost it.
So he lost to Calvin Kattar.
Yes. But that one was it was close.
Oh, it was a great fight. It was
yeah. And then he bounced back against Gavin Tucker.
Okay.
First round knockout.
Yeah, in the very first round.
Yep.
So this is going to be another step up for him. This is going to be a big opportunity in a main event showcase. I am going to pick Korean Zombie experience and just enjoying the way he fights. This is going to be a barn burner, though. This is a must watch for me.
Yeah, for me, this one, it could go to the scorecards, but it's for sure probably going to stack up to be a war. I'm actually leaning on the Dan Ige train on this one.
You like the up-and-comer.
I like what he's been able to do. His fight against Edson Barbosa, that went down as, I think, a split decision. But I remember he had some really good moments in that fight and really neutralized Edson. So this could be a style versus style type fight where the pressure from TKZ meets the precision of Dan Ige. So it makes for a good fight.
I'm with it. So we had one other fight we wanted to get into. So we got the return of Rory McDonald at PFL this weekend, fighting the oldest man alive.
He certainly looks like it.
He was dusty in the picture.
Gleison Tebow, when he was 24 years old in the UFC, looked like he was 40.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the guy hasn't aged, but that's not to say he doesn't look like he's 100.
Did you ever think that it was a complete, like smoke and mirror show that he ever made 155 pounds?
Oh, I mean, he was...
Because that man looked like he was coming in at 225 every single night.
He was taking some kind of diuretics.
It was weird. He also had that weird tattoo where it made his arms look like he was a cyborg. No idea what's going on with Gleison Tebow these days, but I know just out of experience that you can't pick against Rory McDonald outside of the UFC.
It seems like there's going to be a big size disparity, just like
lengthwise,
from a length and height perspective. Yeah.
Length, like arm length. Fan? Yeah, you know. Yeah, I'm all right. You good.
Yeah, so just from like a Rory, like Rory's length, as you put it, is probably going to be a little bit too much for Gleison.
I don't know. As soon as I said it, I felt wrong. I was like, I don't think I want to. Yeah, he was like, "Come on, fam, pause." Like, oh man. All right, I'll collect myself.
So yeah, Rory's going to get it done. I would venture to say a finish, ground and pound, maybe.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if he hits him with a 1-2 combination and sets him down. Gleison Tebow, to your point, is dusted, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a quick finish here.
Keep a lookout for that PFL card though, because we did reference it earlier. I think it is littered with
you got
older UFC
Cesar
names.
Ferreira, you got Diego Junior Roca, I think it is.
You have Vinny Bagalesh on the card.
Carlos Jr.
Tom Lawler is on there. It's just there's a lot of guys with UFC experience. Should be a good card. I'm going to be checking
something
it out.
to take in. I think it's happening this Thursday.
Yes, sir.
So not something that's going to compete with the UFC, but maybe something you watch on your Thursday.
What the fuck do you do on Thursdays?
Watch Grey's Anatomy.
Oh shit.
Sorry.
That's still on, huh?
That shout out to Dante for that one. But that's pretty much all we've got going on this week. Like Lenny said earlier, we've got the Good Taste Weekly episode hitting right before this. Make sure you go check that out. But as always, you can find us where, Len?
At Good Taste Live on Twitter.
And at For Those With Good Taste on Instagram.
Yeah, as well as YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Deezer, D's Nuts, Yahoo Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Space. I think we're on a satellite somewhere.
We certainly are.
I sent a message in a bottle of our last podcast.
We're also in the cloud now.
Wow.
So you can find us there.
Yeah, with the rain.
But if you're not sure where to find us, just hit the subscribe button. That'll take you to everything we do. And make sure to hit like, drop a couple comments, maybe just drop some fight picks, bet some money. I bet you won't.
Link in the bio, yo.
But you can catch all of us right back here, and I said all of us because everybody that's here, right back next week.
Same
Peace, guys.
Time, same bat.
No, it's always a great time, dude.
Got it.
Yeah. Later, guys.
Peace. Love you.
For those with good taste.